Do you even know who your father is? This is a question a tourist once asked a Mosuo child point blank. Others have looked at Mosuo women and asked with a smirk, so how much does it cost to have a walk-in marriage with Mosuo women? To the world, this place is the legendary Kingdom of Women. But in the eyes of some outsiders, that title has been twisted into a stage for casual, commitment-free intimacy. They see a romantic paradise or something suspicious. What is actually happening here, behind the tourism performances and the shallow social media posts? The Mosuo are an ancient group with a long history, living along the shores of Lugu Lake. This is China's only matrilineal society. Here, men spend their days working hard in their own mother's home, plowing fields and tending to their own sisters and nieces. It is only when the sun goes down that they head to their wife's house. But there is a specific custom here. They do not enter through the front door, they climb a wooden ladder to the woman's flower room. Because outsiders only see this rhythmic cycle of climbing a ladder at night and parting before dawn, staying in separate homes during the day, they jump to conclusions. To those who do not understand, it looks less like a family structure and more like something secretive, even like cheating. In recent years, the internet has been flooded with bizarre stories. Some news reports call it a men's paradise where you can change partners every night. Some even describe it as a world of lawless intimacy. These clickbait headlines look at a sacred tradition and see only something scandalous. But let us turn away from the noise and see the real Mosuo world through the eyes of two young sisters.
这段时间里遗忘了手机信号，却记住了神树下织布的时光。
Droma Lamtso and Droma Tse Ring are twins growing up in a home without a father. To us, this sounds like a story full of regret, but these girls have never felt a lack of love. In a Mosuo household, a child is never the treasure of just one person. They are the children of the entire family, cherished by every elder together. In fact, many Mosuo children reach the age of 4 or 5 without even knowing which woman is their biological mother. That is because their mother and all her sisters have held them and loved them with the same fullness from the very beginning. In the Mosuo language, a mother is called Ami. To these children, every woman in the house is their Ami. They do know who their biological father is, he just does not live under the same roof. While their biological father visits with care, it is their uncles who are deeply involved in their daily lives. In a Mosuo family, the uncle is the one who actually plays the role of the father at home, pouring all his steadiness into these nieces. To answer the visitors' curious questions, a Mosuo uncle decided to speak up with his own sense of humor.
在这不用买房买车，爬路就可以。两个人有感觉了才去爬，如果没感觉的话，白爬人家不理你。我试过，人家没理我。舅舅在家是没有床铺的，所以我都抱到他家去了，所以每一天在这里吃过晚饭，就去媳妇家报到，早上洗个脸回来吃早点。退休嘛，
退休去哪里？
回家来嘛，不再去媳妇家睡了，就在家里睡嘛，不然你7、80还走来走去掉沟里去了，走出人命来了。你们是不死不休啊，我们可以退休，70退休，
可以退休。
有个年龄规定70，如果身体特别好，80退可以的，身体实在不行嘛，60也能退嘛，病退嘛，病退。
Back at home, the twins' lives seem free of worry, but lately a quiet tension has set in. They are approaching their 13th birthday, their coming-of-age ceremony. It is the moment they officially become adults, and they are nervous, feeling unready for the weight of tradition. Their quiet rhythm was suddenly broken by a stranger, a blogger who came not just to watch, but to learn the ancient craft of Mosuo wool weaving. Following the sisters and their grandmother, she learned to shear sheep and spin yarn, work in the loom until the wool became warm fabric. Through this shared labor, the girls quickly welcomed her as a big sister, leading her to their secret place at the foot of Gemu Goddess Mountain. In this vast wilderness, they shared their deepest heartaches and growing pains. It felt like a hidden paradise, a place where no outside noise could disturb you. There was none of the dirtiness people imagine, only a sense of purity, a true cleansing of the soul.
亲亲我就睡不着啊，明天记得你早点睡吧。亲亲我也睡不着，睡觉。
The day finally came and the visiting blogger was invited to witness it in full. She would later describe it as one of the most moving things she had ever seen. The Mosuo coming-of-age ceremony is held when a child turns 13. It is one of the 3 most sacred rituals in Mosuo life. The other 2 are the ceremony welcoming a newborn and the ceremony of farewell at death. Together, these 3 mark the full arc of a human life. The ceremony takes place beside the main room of the family home. This room is the beating heart of any Mosuo household. During the ritual, girls stand on the side of a post that represents femininity. Boys stand on the side of a post that represents masculinity. Both posts come from the same tree. This is a detail that speaks quietly to the Mosuo understanding of men and women. They are different, and yet they come from the same root. The Mosuo Ami know in their hearts that they cannot protect their children forever. And so at the most sacred moment of the ceremony, an Ami takes her own sash, a belt worn close to the body, carried through years of daily life, and ties it around her child's waist. As she does, she speaks to the spirits. She is telling them that from this day forward, this child will be watched over not only by family, but by something greater. That belt is not just a piece of cloth. It is a mother's love made tangible, the weight of everything she hopes for her child, wrapped around them and fastened. The visiting blogger stood nearby, watching all of this, and found herself unable to look away. The Mosuo grandmother beside her noticed. Without a word, the grandmother reached into her own belongings and brought out a sash that had been passed down from her own Ami. She walked over to the blogger and tied it around her waist herself. In Mosuo tradition, when someone is given a family's sash, they become part of that family. Just like that, a stranger had been welcomed home. The blogger's heart was full. She had come as an outsider, and somehow she was leaving his family. But time, as it always does, moved on. When word got around that she was preparing to leave, the grandmother's eyes filled with tears. She held the blogger's hands and would not let go, telling her again and again to come back. She told her to treat this house as her own and come back whenever she needed to. It was the kind of goodbye that catches you off guard. It is the kind that stays with you long after you have driven away. For the blogger, that moment said everything about who the Mosuo people are. And for us, watching through the screen, it leaves us wondering, what exactly is it about this way of life that allows a person to develop such deep feelings for a total stranger in just a few short days?
我是活了无用啊，是活是看呀是。
In Mosuo tradition, completing the coming-of-age ceremony at 13 marks the moment a young person officially becomes eligible for walk-in marriage. But as the world has changed, so too has the practice. Today, most Mosuo young people wait until they are 16 or even 20 before they begin that part of their lives. And when they do, what they step into is something that looks very different from marriage as most of us know it. In mainstream Chinese culture, marriage follows a familiar path. A man and a woman come together. The woman leaves her childhood home, moves into her husband's family, and begins the work of building a life among people who were once strangers. It is a significant uprooting, leaving behind your mother, your siblings, and everything that shaped you, to go and belong somewhere new. In walk-in marriage, none of that happens. A man never takes a woman from her home, and a woman never leaves hers. Both stay exactly where they have always been, with their own mothers, their own families, and the people who have loved them longest. the parton that so many women quietly grieve when they marry. In the Mosuo world, it simply does not exist. When the blogger asked the Mosuo Ami whether walk-in marriage, with no certificate, no shared home, could really last, the answer came back warm and certain. Most of the time, yes. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Walk-in marriage strips away almost everything that quietly erodes a relationship in mainstream culture. No bride price, no dowry, no financial negotiations tangled up in what should be a simple act of love. No tension between a wife and her mother-in-law because the two women never share a roof. No arguments over daily expenses wearing away at the tenderness between two people. Two people are together for one reason only, because they choose to be. Someone once described walk-in marriage as feeling like the early days of falling in love, before life gets complicated. It is like you are always just dating the person you adore. Only warmth, only the wanton. In the Mosuo world, loving someone for a lifetime is not a romantic ideal. It is just what usually happens.
我们的婚姻是婚姻，家庭是家庭。
你有没有车？你有没有房？你有没有钱？跟我一点关系都没有。
我现在50岁了，51岁了，还在保持谈恋爱的那种感觉。
不说男人他就不会打女人，
从来
从来没有，我敢确定哈，这个是100%的。
女人打男人吗？
直播说的。
That warmth extends beyond love and marriage. It shapes the way the Mosuo care for their oldest and their youngest. In mainstream culture, elderly parents often depend on a single child to look after them in their final years. Those without family nearby may end up spending their last chapter of life in a nursing home among strangers. Young children, too, are largely the responsibility of one small family unit. Two parents carrying the weight of raising a child largely on their own. In a Mosuo maternal household, none of this is the reality. The elderly are looked after by everyone. Every younger generation in the family shares that responsibility. No one elder is left to face old age alone or forgotten. And the children born of walk-in marriage are raised by the mother's entire extended family. Every elder in the house plays a part. A child here is never just one family's child. They belong to everyone, and everyone shows up for them. There are no nursing homes needed and no orphanages either. What the rest of the world has built institutions to provide, the Mosuo have simply woven into the way they live. The Mosuo matrilineal household is not only a place of emotional strength, it is also, quietly, a place of economic strength. Because everyone in the family works together, pools their efforts, and shares what they build, Mosuo families have consistently earned more than other ethnic groups in the same region. For those living in the mountains, the whole family works the land and tends the livestock together. That collective effort produces a stability that a small, isolated household rarely can. For those living along the shores of Lugu Lake, the family's greatest resource is the lake itself. Its breathtaking beauty draws visitors from across the country, and Mosuo families have turned that into a livelihood. The village of Luoshui is a clear example. The families doing best there, the ones who have built the most prosperous lives, are the Mosuo matrilineal households. As far back as 1989, one such family was bold enough to open a guest house. In that first year alone, they brought in the equivalent of around $5,500. Today, that number has multiplied 75 times over. The model works because the family works together. Perhaps it is that warmth, that sense of being held by something larger than yourself, that has begun drawing people in from the outside. In recent years, a quiet but steady stream of young people have made their way to Lugu Lake. Worn down by the pace and loneliness of city life, they are looking for something they could not quite name. Some of them have stayed. They have come to be known as New Mosuo. One of them is Zhu Wenqing, a young man from Shanghai. He did not just visit. He found his way into a Mosuo matrilineal family and put down roots. Somewhere along the way, he changed the plans he had made for his own life. He had always been certain he did not want children. Then he became a father. Something about this place and this way of living opened a door in him that he had not known was there. He found his happiness at Lugu Lake in a life he never could have predicted. But the world does not stand still, and neither does the Mosuo way of life. As education has spread, as modern ideas about marriage and family have filtered in, and as more and more young Mosuo people have left Lugu Lake to study and work in cities, something is quietly shifting. The numbers tell the story plainly. The entire Mosuo population is only around 40,000 people. It is a small community and one that has always been vulnerable to the currents of a changing world. Today, the proportion of Mosuo who practice walk-in marriage has fallen to around 40%. Traditional matrilineal households along Lugu Lake now make up only about 30% of families there. The generation born after the year 2000, the young Mosuo men and women growing up right now, may be the last to come of age inside a traditional matrilineal household. It is possible that one day, this way of living will gradually fade, the way so many singular and beautiful things do. But there is something the Mosuo carry that does not fade so easily. The instinct to hold together, to show up for each other, to make sure no one faces the hard parts of life alone. That is not a custom. That is something deeper. And whatever changes come, that perhaps is what will remain.